The moment that changed everything supposedly lasted less than 4 seconds. Not a speech, not a scandal, not even a confirmed romance. Just a look between Princess Leonor and a young man from her teenage years during a private gathering that Spanish tabloids are suddenly obsessed with this week. And honestly, I think the media is missing the real story completely. Because this isn't just another, Royal X wants her back, headline. This is about what happens when someone underestimates a girl, and then watches her become the future Queen of Spain. And I don't know if you noticed this too, but there's something strangely human about the timing. Back when Leonor was younger, quieter, hidden behind palace walls and awkward public appearances, people projected all kinds of assumptions onto her. Too shy, too protected, too scripted. But now, after military training, public speeches, and carrying herself with a confidence nobody expected at 18, suddenly the attention feels different. And maybe that's why this story is exploding right now. Because people love comeback stories. But they love regret stories even more. And here's the uncomfortable question nobody in the royal press wants to ask. Did he reject her, or did he reject the version of her that existed before she found herself? That's the real story here. Now before we go deeper, I want to say something quickly. If you're new to Leonor's story, subscribe, I post every day. Because honestly, the reason people keep coming back to these conversations isn't just the royal drama. It's watching someone grow up under impossible pressure in real time. And this week's whispers coming out of Spain feel bigger than gossip. They feel symbolic. Apparently, and again, some of this is circulating through royal commentators rather than official palace confirmation. The young man who once distanced himself from Leonor during her teenage years has been trying to reconnect now that she's become one of Europe's most watched young royals. And listen, I know some viewers will say, well obviously. She's famous now, but I actually think it's more complicated than that. Because fame alone doesn't create this kind of fascination. Presence does. And Leonor's presence changed dramatically over the last year. You can literally track it through her public appearances. The posture, the eye contact, the way she walks into military ceremonies now compared to 2 years ago. She no longer looks like someone being pushed into history. She looks like someone accepting it. That shift changes how people see you. I've seen this happen in normal life too. Sometimes people don't recognize your value until your confidence catches up to your potential. And maybe that sounds harsh, but tell me I'm wrong. What fascinates me is how Spanish media keeps framing this as a romantic twist, while ignoring the psychological side of it. Imagine being a teenage boy around someone like Leonor years ago. Not the polished future queen we see now. A nervous teenager surrounded by security, cameras, expectations, impossible pressure from the monarchy, and a life that probably felt more restrictive than glamorous. That's not easy. People romanticize royal life until they realize every text message, every friendship, every rumor can become international content. Honestly, I sometimes think normal teenagers would completely collapse under that pressure. And yet somehow Leonor adapted. That's the transformation people are reacting to now. It reminds me a little of the way Kate Middleton slowly changed public perception in the UK. Early on, critics underestimated her calm personality because she wasn't loud or dramatic. But over time, consistency became her strength. Leonor is building a similar image in Spain, but with a Gen Z twist. Less fairy tale princess, more disciplined future leader. And that's why this, he wants her back, narrative is connecting emotionally online. Not because viewers care deeply about one random teenage romance, but because almost everyone has experienced being overlooked before they became who they were meant to be. That's universal. Now here's where I'm going to give my hot take, and some people will disagree with me. I think the palace secretly benefits from stories like this. Not officially, of course. They'd never admit it, but emotionally, strategically, absolutely, because these stories humanize Leonor in a way official royal speeches never can. The Spanish monarchy understands something modern institutions are finally learning in 2026. People no longer connect to perfection. They connect to vulnerability. That's why even creators like Mr. Beast dominate online culture. Every massive public figure today survives on emotional accessibility. The audience wants to feel like they know you. And ironically, the monarchy, the oldest institution imaginable, is now adapting to internet-era storytelling. That's fascinating to watch. While Prince William and the British royals still lean heavily into tradition and controlled appearances, Leonor's rise feels different. More personal, More narrative-driven, almost like Spain realized younger audiences need emotional connection before institutional loyalty. And whether intentional or not, stories like this build that connection. Because suddenly Leonor isn't just a future queen. She becomes the girl who got underestimated. The girl who changed. The girl someone regrets losing. That's powerful branding, even if it happens accidentally. But here's another angle nobody talks about enough. What if Leonor herself has completely moved on? Seriously, notice how these stories almost always center the man's perspective. He wants her back. He regrets it. He missed his chance. But what about her perspective? Maybe she doesn't care anymore. Maybe the military training changed her priorities completely. Maybe royal duty hardened her emotionally. Maybe she realized early relationships become impossible when your future involves constitutional responsibility and global scrutiny. That's another thing people forget about royal life. Normal relationships are already hard. Royal relationships, they become geopolitical theater. Every interaction matters. Every photo becomes analysis. Every friendship becomes speculation. At some point, I imagine you stop asking, do they like me? And start asking, can they survive this world? And honestly, that's a brutal way to grow up. I think that's why Leonor's recent appearances resonate so strongly with younger audiences. Beneath the uniforms and ceremonies, people sense someone carrying enormous emotional weight while trying to stay composed. There's something quietly lonely about that. And maybe this rumored reconnection story matters less because of romance, and more because it reminds viewers there was once a version of Leonor who briefly experienced ordinary teenage emotions before history fully claimed her. That's the bittersweet part. The future Queen of Spain probably had a tiny window where she could almost live normally. Almost. And then reality arrived. Now, another thing I noticed this week is how divided public reaction has been online. Some people are saying, he only wants her now because she became famous. Others are saying, people grow up. Teenagers make mistakes. And honestly, both things can be true. That's what makes the story believable. Life isn't clean enough for perfect villains. Sometimes people genuinely fail to recognize someone's value until later. Sometimes confidence changes attraction. Sometimes timing ruins good connections. That's human. And if I'm being real with you, that emotional realism is exactly why these Leonor stories keep dominating attention online. They're no longer just royal updates. They're emotional mirrors. People see themselves inside these narratives. The overlooked teenager, the late regret, the glow up, the pressure to become someone bigger than your younger self. That's why viewers stay until the end. Not for palace gossip, for recognition. And I think Leonor's team, whether intentionally or accidentally, is slowly building one of the smartest royal images in Europe right now. Not untouchable perfection, but evolving strength. There's a huge difference. Because perfect people create admiration. Evolving people create loyalty. And loyalty is what builds long-term audiences, whether you're a monarchy, a celebrity, or honestly even a YouTube creator. That's something I've personally started noticing more in 2026 content. The channels surviving right now aren't the ones screaming headlines every day. They're the ones building emotional continuity, making viewers feel like they're following a real story with growth, setbacks, tension, and transformation. Leonor's story naturally fits that format, which is why moments like this suddenly feel bigger than tabloid gossip. They become chapters. And maybe the saddest part of all this is realizing the young man who once walked away may now understand something too late. The quiet girl he knew as a teenager didn't disappear. She evolved into someone the entire world now watches. And once the world starts watching a royal figure that closely, getting them back is no longer simple. Because you're no longer competing with another person. You're competing with destiny itself. And honestly, that might be the one thing no relationship can ever truly beat.